The silence didn't explode, it settled. The kitchen smelled like garlic and basil, like the pasta I had just drained. Steam clung to the cabinets and blurred the glass of the microwave door. The timer on the stove blinked 0000 in soft green light, a tiny digital heartbeat. Outside our apartment window, traffic moved in a distant hum, steady and indifferent, as if the city had agreed to keep breathing no matter what happened inside these walls. He stood across from me with his hands tucked into the pockets of his gray hoodie, the one I used to steal when I missed him. His face wasn't angry, it wasn't sad, it was calm. "I don't have romantic feelings for you anymore." One sentence. That was all it took, not a fight, not a betrayal I could point at, just a quiet confession delivered like a weather report. My fingers tightened around the wooden spoon, the edge of the counter pressed cold against my hip. For a strange second I thought my heart had stopped, but it hadn't. It was beating carefully, cautiously, as if waiting for him to correct himself. He didn't. "I still care about you," he added quickly. "We're good together, we can still live together. It doesn't have to change anything, it's comfortable." Comfortable. The word lingered in the air heavier than the steam rising from the pot. 3 years reduced to convenience. The pasta water began to hiss and bubble over, snapping softly against the stovetop. I turned off the burner without looking at him. My hands were steady, I noticed that, steady. He reached for my fingers out of habit, maybe reassurance. His hands felt cold, and in that small kitchen with garlic in the air and something unnamed settling between us, I didn't cry. I just went quiet. For 3 years, loving him had been a rhythm, not fireworks, not chaos, not the kind of love that slammed doors and made neighbors whisper. Ours was quieter, structured. Predictable in the way comfort can start to feel like safety. I learned how he took his coffee within the first month, 2 sugars, no stirring, because he liked watching the cream swirl slowly into the dark. By the second year, I could tell what kind of day he'd had just by the way he set his keys on the counter. A drop meant stress, a careful placement meant exhaustion. A toss meant irritation he wouldn't talk about unless I coaxed it out of him, and I always coaxed. Love became something I did without thinking. I stocked the fridge before he noticed it was empty. I remembered his mother's birthday when he forgot. I washed his favorite hoodie before important meetings because he swore it made him grounded. I learned which pasta sauce he liked best, which podcasts helped him sleep, which silence meant leave me alone, and which silence meant please ask me what's wrong. We built routines the way people build fences, piece by piece, assuming they would protect something. Sunday mornings were pancakes and grocery lists. Wednesday nights were takeout and bad crime shows. Every night I set his coffee mug on the counter before bed so mornings would feel easier. I didn't notice when love stopped being a choice and started becoming a habit. The shift was subtle at first. He started bringing his phone into the bathroom, not suspiciously, casually, like it had always been there. He mentioned a new colleague from work more than once. "She's sharp," he'd said. Really driven. There was admiration in his voice, but I told myself that was normal. People admire their coworkers. He laughed at his screen more often, a soft exhale through his nose. Once when I asked what was funny, he tilted the phone away without realizing he was doing it. "Just work stuff." Work. The word became a shield. He stayed later, said he had projects to wrap up. Deadlines, strategy meetings. He came home smelling faintly different, not perfume, not exactly, but like a room I wasn't in. I noticed, but I explained it away. Because when you've built 3 years on routines and shared rent and matching bath towels, you don't suspect collapse. You assume fatigue, stress, a phase. The kisses grew shorter. The touches more absent-minded. He still sat beside me on the couch, but there was space now, small, precise space, like he was careful not to brush against me unless necessary. And yet I kept making the coffee, I kept cooking dinner, I kept asking about his day. Love as a habit doesn't disappear loudly, it thins, it stretches. It waits to see if effort will pull it back into shape. I thought if I leaned in, he would lean back. I didn't realize he had already stepped away. By the time he stood in our kitchen and calmly told me he no longer had romantic feelings, it wasn't sudden. It was simply the first honest thing he had said in months. And somewhere in the background of that honesty was another woman's name, never confessed, never admitted, but hovering quietly between us like a shadow at the edge of a room. I didn't know the details yet, but I could feel the vacancy, and vacancy always has a cause. When he finished speaking, he waited for me to fall apart. I rinsed the wooden spoon under warm water, set it down, and turned to face him. "Okay," the word surprised him more than tears ever could. "Okay," he repeated. "You don't have romantic feelings," I said evenly. "I understand." His shoulders stiffened. He had prepared for emotion, he hadn't prepared for agreement. That night after he said it, he moved through the apartment like someone who believed he had negotiated a soft landing. He poured himself a drink, rinsed his glass, and asked if I wanted to watch a show. When I said no, he nodded as if no meant later. In bed, he turned off the lamp and whispered, "We can figure this out." "We already did," I answered, and my voice surprised me by how gentle it sounded. He rolled over without replying. The next evening I came home at 6. He was on the couch with his laptop open, TV murmuring in the background. His eyes flicked toward the kitchen automatically. The stove stayed off. I changed into comfortable clothes and pulled a small container from the fridge leftover salad. I ate quietly at the counter. At 6:40 he looked up. "Are we ordering something?" "I already ate." A pause. "You didn't cook. You said nothing has to change," I replied calmly. "You're right." Confusion tightened his face. "We always make dinner. We used to." He stared at me as if I'd shifted the ground beneath him. Eventually he ordered takeout. The smell of fries filled the apartment. He kept glancing at me, waiting for me to fix it. I didn't. Thursday morning my alarm rang at 6:30 and I got up at 6:30, not 6:20 like I had for 3 years. I made 1 cup of coffee. Mine. The machine hissed softly. I poured it into my travel mug. He walked in, hair messy, eyes heavy, and stopped when he saw the empty space where his mug usually waited. "Did you already make coffee?" "For myself." "You didn't make mine." I met his eyes. "I didn't know you still wanted girlfriend benefits." His jaw tightened. "You don't have to be petty." "I'm not," I said gently. "I'm being consistent." He scoffed. "You're overreacting." "To your words?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. I picked up my bag. "Have a good day." In the elevator, I didn't feel angry. I felt aligned. By Friday night, he was watching me like I was a stranger in his home. I folded my laundry. Only mine. I cooked dinner. "A small portion, only mine." "You're really going to keep doing this?" he asked. "Doing what?" "Acting like we're not together." "We're not," I said calmly. "Not romantically. That doesn't mean we stop caring." "I care about coworkers too," I replied evenly. "I don't build my life around them." He exhaled sharply. "So this is punishment?" "No. This is respect." "For who?" "For myself." Silence fell between us, heavier than anger would have been. "You're trying to make me feel guilty," he muttered. "I'm not responsible for how you feel about your own decision," I said, and I watched the sentence land like a coin dropped into a deep well. Saturday morning used to mean pancakes, errands, and the easy we have shared plans. This time I dressed early and picked up my purse. "Where are you going?" he asked from the bedroom. "Out with who?" "I have plans." His expression shifted. "Since when?" "Since I'm not someone's girlfriend." He sat up. "I never said we broke up. You said you don't have romantic feelings." "That's not the same thing." "Then what is it?" He had no answer. "You're being cold," he said finally. "I'm being proportional." I walked out before he could argue, and outside the air felt steady like the world had rules again. After that, the apartment became neutral territory, not hostile. Not loving, just shared square footage with separate gravity. My groceries stayed on the left side of the fridge. His drifted to the right. I bought my own paper towels, my own coffee filters, my own detergent. He noticed every item like a tiny eviction notice. "Did you move the almond milk?" he asked one evening, frowning into the fridge. "I bought my own," I said without turning. "You're labeling things now." "I'm organizing," he huffed. "You're really committed to this." "To what?" I asked. "This detachment." I dried my hands slowly. "I'm aligned with what you said." The calmness of it irritated him more than anger would have. The silence in the apartment had teeth. It didn't scream, it observed. We could sit on the same couch and feel like we were in different climates. The television flickered, bright and meaningless, while his eyes kept darting toward me like he was waiting for the old version of me to reappear and apologize for disappearing. She never did. Outside that apartment, my world widened in ways I'd forgotten were possible. I stayed late at work, not to avoid him, but because my mind finally belonged to me. I volunteered for a client presentation. I joined coworkers for lunch instead of rushing home to make dinner I wasn't hungry for. I laughed until my throat felt warm and realized I hadn't laughed like that in months. My manager told me, "You seem lighter lately." I almost cried, not from sadness but from recognition. Lighter wasn't a compliment, it was a diagnosis. I started sleeping deeper, the kind of sleep that doesn't brace for footsteps in the hall. I stopped checking his mood before speaking. I stopped apologizing for taking up space in my own home. He unraveled in the absence of my quiet labor. He burned chicken and set off the smoke alarm. He stood beneath it, blinking like a man surprised by consequences. You could have helped, he said when I opened a window. You didn't ask. I shouldn't have to ask. I met his eyes. Neither should I. He started forgetting things I used to remember for him. A dentist appointment, a birthday call, a rent transfer on the exact day because I was no longer the reminder. Every missed detail tightened his mouth into a thin line of irritation that had no safe place to land. It couldn't land on me because I wasn't engaging. It couldn't land on Emily because she wasn't responsible, so it landed back on him and he hated the weight of it. Her name slipped into our rooms like smoke. Emily thinks we should change the process. Emily said the client loved my idea. Emily and I stayed late finishing. He watched my face after each sentence, waiting for jealousy to prove I still cared. I offered him the same polite interest I'd offer a neighbor. That's great, I said once, tying my shoes. Sounds productive. His expression faltered and I understood then he didn't want my approval, he wanted my reaction. Without it, the story he was telling himself had no audience. He tried different angles. He bought my favorite seltzer and placed it in the fridge like an apology he hoped I'd drink. He cleaned the kitchen and left the sponge squared neatly in the sink, a little altar of effort. He suggested a weekend away, called it a reset. A reset for what? I asked. For us, there is no us, I said. The hope in his face collapsed so quickly it almost made me flinch. One night he muted the TV and said, "This isn't what I meant." "What did you mean?" "I thought we could keep what worked." I held his gaze. "What worked was me loving you." He swallowed. "And you don't anymore. You told me not to." The words were simple, they cut anyway. In the fourth week, his glow about work dimmed into exhaustion. He came home quiet, dropped his keys too hard on the counter and stared at nothing. "She's not who I thought," he muttered. I didn't look up. "Okay," he snapped, "stop saying that." "What should I say?" "Something real. This is real," I said softly. "It just isn't dramatic." The confrontation happened on a Tuesday because ordinary days are where the biggest truths hide. Rain tapped steadily against the windows. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and warm fabric from the dryer. He paced once, twice, then stopped in front of me. "We need to talk." I muted the TV. "Okay," he laughed, sharp with frustration. "You always say that, like none of this matters." "It matters," I said calmly. "You just don't like the outcome." His jaw flexed. "This isn't what I thought would happen." "What did you think would happen?" "I thought you'd fight for us." There it was, his confession, not about love but about control. "I did," I replied. "For 3 years, that's not what I mean." "I know." He dragged a hand down his face. "Emily and I, it's not what you think. I haven't said what I think. We never slept together." "Okay," he flinched. "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Acting like you don't care." "I care," I said evenly, "just not in a way that costs me." His breath hitched. "She made me feel noticed." "Important, and I did." "You did, but it became normal." "Stable," I corrected. He swallowed. "I didn't think you'd just let me go." "You told me you already had." He shook his head, desperate. "I didn't say I didn't love you. You wanted comfort without responsibility. That's not fair." "It's accurate." He stepped closer, eyes shiny. "I thought if things stayed the same, the feelings would come back." "For who?" I asked. He couldn't answer. "For you," I continued quietly. "Not for me." His voice cracked. "She's not what I thought." "She was an escape," I said. "She listens to me." "So did I." He looked away like the wall could rescue him. "She doesn't need anything from me." "Neither do I anymore," I said, and the sentence clicked into place like a lock. His shoulders sagged. "I messed up, yes. I didn't mean to lose you. You didn't mean to lose the version of me that revolved around you." "That's not true." "Then what is?" He exhaled, broken. "I was selfish." He wiped his face with his sleeve and stared at me like he was trying to find the old me hiding behind my calm. "I kept thinking you'd cry," he whispered, "or beg. Something that proved I mattered." "You mattered," I said. "That's why I adjusted." "Adjusted? You removed romance." "I removed romantic labor." He swallowed hard. "You're really done?" "Yes." Final doesn't need volume. He stepped back as if the word pushed him. "So that's it, 3 years and you just walk away." "I'm not walking away from 3 years," I said. "I'm walking away from staying where I'm not chosen." His eyes filled. "You're not even angry." "I was," I admitted, "but anger is loud, self-respect is quiet." He shook his head. "I thought I had time." "You had clarity," I corrected. "You just didn't expect consequences." The rain softened, and in the softer sound his voice finally broke. "I don't want to lose you. You already did." He moved out on a Sunday. No slammed doors, just cardboard boxes and the hollow scrape of furniture legs against hardwood. He packed slowly, folding shirts the way I used to fold them, and I wondered if he was meeting my absence for the first time. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at the apartment like it might apologize. It didn't, neither did I when his car pulled away. The apartment exhaled, the closet felt wider. The bathroom counter cleaner, the air lighter but strange too, like a hotel room you haven't decided to trust yet. For weeks it had felt like a waiting room, two people sitting across from each other, pretending not to notice the clock. Now it was just mine. That first night alone, I sat on the couch in the center instead of the edge. I didn't cry, I didn't celebrate, I just breathed without monitoring someone else's temperature. In the days that followed, I discovered new sounds: the refrigerator's hum, the elevator cable singing faintly through the building, my own laughter bursting unexpectedly on the phone with a friend. I cooked what I wanted when I wanted. Spicy food he hated, roasted vegetables he complained were too healthy. I bought sheets in a color I liked, not one we both tolerated. Each small choice stitched something back together in me. 6 weeks later, I saw him at a cafe downtown. He was leaning forward across a small table, smiling at her the way he used to smile at me, attentive, invested. "Emily," she laughed and touched his wrist lightly. I waited for it, the jealousy, the sting, the urge to compare. Nothing came, no tightness in my chest, no spiral of questions, just observation. He looked the same, I didn't. Because I wasn't standing there wondering if I was enough, I already knew I was. I walked past them without changing pace. He noticed me too late, our eyes met for half a second. Surprise crossed his face, then something like regret. Mine didn't change. I nodded once, the way you acknowledge an old chapter on a shelf, and kept walking. Here's what I learned: auditioning for love is a trap. The moment you start proving, performing, shrinking, overgiving, hoping someone will finally choose you, you've already abandoned yourself. Love isn't a role you rehearse for, it isn't coffee made early to earn devotion, it isn't emotional labor offered like currency. If someone says they don't feel it, believe them, then align. Not to punish, not to manipulate, but to protect your worth. The right love doesn't require an audition, it requires mutual presence, mutual effort, mutual choosing. And the day I stopped performing, I stopped losing.